Hello and welcome to this video. Here I'll be showing you how I colored a drawing that I made of Taki himself from the manga slash OVA slash anime Maiden Rose or Hyakujitsu no Bara by Inaria Fuzanosuke. To be specific, the version that we are seeing here is from the Halloween special where he is a vampire cat thing person. If you like yaoi at all, you should definitely check it out if you haven't seen it yet. You can find it on the internet, I guess. Yeah, and that's what we'll be doing today. As you can see, I colored in my drawing, and I'm currently adding a bit more of reddish tones to Taki's skin, just because your skin isn't one tone. It has more reddish, more pale, more tan parts throughout it, and adding that detail just makes things look more nice and more realistic. Feel free to ask questions about why exactly I do things the way I do them. I will try my best to explain them, but yeah. Generally speaking, I like to go back and forth between colors to blend things and make them look soft, because again, skin isn't one tone, but it isn't patchy for the most part. If you had like vitiligo or something like that, obviously it would be. Or if you had obvious tan lines or something like that. But in this case, we're just talking about blood circulation being different in certain parts of the body compared to others. Also, I like to point out that this drawing, before it was all gray, I made the lines or the shading, I added a layer of red over them to give it all a warmer tone, just because my gray parts in this drawing represent the shadows of whatever light is bouncing off of Taki's skin. And if it were all gray, I guess before you could see kinda how the skin just looked kind of weirdly gray. Even though there was the redness going on, it just still didn't look right. Now it looks more cohesive and more skin-like and more lifelike, because the shades are more reddish now. Also, it helps to make all the shading have the same hue or the same tone, which you'll see what I'm doing later, where I like to make everything have an overall color story, if you will. But more about that later. Yeah, you see me coloring the gloves and thigh-high boots. Too bad you cannot see the high heels on his boots. I should have made it differently. I should have drawn the high heels in this too, but well, I didn't. Anyways, you see me color that in dark blue, and that is because even though I think they would be black, I rarely ever use a real black, like no color whatsoever. I typically use either a dark gray or a dark red or something like that, or like a very dark brown or something, or in this case a dark blue, just because first of all, there is no such thing as a real black in the world, in like your everyday world, I mean. Things that are supposedly black typically are still kind of just dark gray, and yes, I'm very mature. And so putting something completely black into a drawing wouldn't, in my opinion, just doesn't look realistic. Also, you limit your possibilities for shading. Sure, you could just add highlights, but I like to add highlights and shadows at the same time, or like not at the same time, but you get what I mean. The dark blue allows me to give all the lights and shades more interesting color, obviously, because it's blue, not black. And also, I asked my friend what color she thought Taki's clothes should be, and she said black with a blue shimmer in the light. So that's exactly what I did with that. Yeah. As you can see, I adjusted the transparency to be able to see my drawing underneath the colors. The details of line art, or in this case a drawing, can get lost if you have colored in everything and like some details are still within that darkness. So you can play around with your transparency settings, obviously. Nobody's telling you what to do. And yeah, let me point out all the things that I'm saying here. If you like to use your tools and if you like to draw things differently than I do, do whatever works for you and however you like to do things. But if you want to use some of my tricks, feel free to use them. And if you have questions, as I said, feel free to ask them. Yeah, so yeah, I'm adding in the laces. Nothing interesting to see here, I would say. This, obviously, because I said this is from the Halloween special, I used that as a reference when I made the drawing. If you are using a reference, obviously you can use that, but even if you draw things like without a reference, it helps to look at things in real life and understand how exactly they look before you try to draw them. That's basically how I learned to draw, where I just looked at people and things and figured out how to replicate what I was seeing on paper. And that's a continuous process. There is no such thing as being done learning. Like, there's no such thing as perfection, I believe. You can always improve, and you should never limit yourself in what you allow yourself to learn for later works. So even if you don't use my techniques right now, maybe one day something that I mentioned here might be helpful to you. So I hope that this can help somebody somehow one day, maybe, hopefully, I don't know. Here you see me using a new layer with a transparency setting called inlay, I believe, in English. As you might see, my settings and program are in German, which is because I am German. So I'm trying to translate what I'm seeing and doing as best as I can to English. But yeah, I like to use this inlay thing for shading at times. Sometimes I prefer to use multiply, but right now, because inlay gives more saturation and often it looks softer, in my opinion, I prefer to use it this way. For skin, for example, I like to use inlay, or a combination. I often use combinations where I will start with like a general shading layer, where I use inlay, and in another layer I would be using multiply. But right here I just use inlay twice, once with like an overall shading situation, and this version, or like this layer, I do with more detail in mind, where, yeah, you can see me going over the intricate ups and downs of Taki's gorgeous body. Yeah, you can see the dark blue almost looks black by now. You'll see me adjusting that later on too. And another thing I would say that is important, obviously in anime and manga you often see very harsh shadings where it's just one part is shading, the other part is purely light. Obviously in real life shading doesn't look like that. Obviously in real life there's gradients happening and not everything is just highlighted and just shaded. So blend out your shades and highlights, unless that's an effect that you're going for, where you want to have harsh highlights and harsh shadows. But in this case, I prefer to use a more softer highlighting and shading. And yeah, just adding a bit more color to Taki's skin, because he's probably a bit embarrassed about what he's doing right here, because people are watching him, and oh no, what if his people see that? Oh no. I'm certain Suguri, Uemura, and the others are crying in a corner right now, and Klaus is just drooling and waiting to attack, I guess. Sorry, if you don't know Maiden Rose yet, look it up and enjoy it. I would hope that you enjoy reading it. Otherwise, what are you doing on my channel? This is an explicitly yaoi and general hentai and dirty things centered channel. Well, here we come to the part that I mentioned earlier, where I use the fully colored version of this drawing to add lights to and to adjust the colors. Yeah, I'm kind of trying to use a effect that makes it look like there's a light behind Taki, or in front of him rather. Yeah, I just selected everything, and now you can see me adjusting the colors in, yeah, you see that now. The reason why I like to do that is because even though things do have their own color, where skin is skin-colored, hair in this case is black, the clothes are dark blue, and so on and so forth, the light that is shining on these objects has its own color, and I like to use that to tie in the overall drawing, so it doesn't look like just colored surfaces, but rather like that it looks like it's all in one place, that everything is being lighted by the same light source, if that makes any sense. Sorry for my ramblings. I'm improvising. Yeah. As you can see, many of these effects don't really go very far. They are details that I like to add in. Little color adjustments, little details, and things that probably in the end people won't really notice, but I prefer to put them there just because to me they make a difference, and in the end I draw for myself. That's, I think, an important thing to keep in mind when you are drawing for other people. For money, for example, that might be a different story, but if you are just drawing because you like to draw, because you're an artist who just enjoys their craft, I think you should always keep going as long as you want to, or stop working on something when you don't want to keep going anymore. don't force yourself to work on something if you don't feel like it's going anywhere or like it's worth it, because that just leads to frustration, and you don't want to be frustrated about something that you enjoy doing. Yeah, here I'm just bringing back some light to the highlighted areas, and after some background texture detailing, I don't exactly know how to describe this. Basically, I'm just making dots with the burn tool, increasingly smaller dots. I think it looks like blurred out lights and shadows that might be happening in the background, and also I kind of give Taki a bit of a halo. I didn't bother adding in a very intricate detailed background. I typically don't, because in all honesty, don't tell anyone, but I hate backgrounds. I prefer focusing on whoever or whatever is in the foreground, and the background is just like an afterthought to me. I envy people who can add intricate backgrounds, but that's just not me. But yeah, this is just an easy way to add in a bit of background to make it not white and not just one swatch of color. Here are some last color adjustments, and that's basically it. I'm done. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Leave comments. I hope you will come back to this channel and watch some more once I do post something. So yeah, that'll be it. Bye.